My daughter became silent overnight. What I discovered next blew my mind and changed our lives. I never thought I'd find peace again after everything with Mark fell apart. But here I was, standing in the kitchen of our little house in Portland, chopping vegetables while watching the fiery reds and golds of the autumn trees outside. It had been nearly 2 years since I finally felt like the weight on my shoulders started to lift, and the calm that now filled this quiet suburban neighborhood gave me a sense of hope I hadn't known in a long time. Working from home as a graphic designer gave me the flexibility I needed, and this house, though small and simple, was exactly the kind of place I needed to rebuild what had been broken. The front door creaked open, and I heard the familiar shuffle of David's tired footsteps. He was home. Turning around with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, I greeted him softly. "Welcome back." He set his briefcase down with a weary sigh, but returned my smile with genuine warmth. David, my second husband, was a solid man, 45, working as a project manager at a tech company. Not flashy, not loud, but steady. I could always count on him. "Where's Lily?" he asked as he shrugged off his jacket and hung it up carefully. "Upstairs, doing her homework," I replied, trying to keep the normalcy in my voice. Today was a big day for Lily. She'd had a tough math test, and I was hoping it hadn't shaken her too much. Lily was 13 now, the heartbeat of our small family. Before David came into our lives, it had just been the two of us, me and Lily, against the world. The years after Mark and I divorced had been rough. We were alone for so long, figuring things out on our own, struggling to find balance. But David had arrived quietly, patiently earning his place in our lives, not rushing or forcing his way into our hearts. He wasn't her father, but he acted like he was. He helped with homework, sat through movies with her on lazy weekends, and took her to the park when she needed fresh air. I saw the way Lily's eyes lit up around him sometimes. I hoped that meant trust was growing. Later, I heard David's footsteps climbing the stairs, and then a soft knock on Lily's bedroom door. "Lily, how'd the test go?" His voice was gentle, careful. I listened for a moment, imagining their conversation. David had always been the kind of stepfather who treated Lily like his own flesh and blood, even if there was no blood relation. That meant everything to me. When he came back down, he paused by the kitchen, and I put a hand on his shoulder, offering a tired but affectionate smile. "The meeting ran late today, huh?" I asked, trying to keep things light. "Yeah," he admitted, opening a beer. "About that new project we're launching next quarter. But whenever I walk through this door, everything else melts away. You and Lily are the only things I want to focus on." I didn't say it out loud, but I felt the same way. After everything I'd been through with Mark and the chaos of those years, this quiet little family was everything. I couldn't help but remember those dark times. Mark's gambling problem, the nights he stayed out for days, the arguments that tore us apart. When Lily was 7, I'd made the hardest decision of my life and walked away. I thought I was protecting her, giving us both a chance to survive. Then David came into our lives like a calm wind after a storm. I believed we could be a real family, one built on love and patience, not broken promises. Suddenly, Lily appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her long brown hair tied back, dressed in her school uniform. She looked more grown up than ever, her face a perfect mirror of my own. "Mom, I got 92 on my math test," she said, a hint of pride in her voice. I dropped the knife and pulled her into a hug. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." I asked if she'd told David yet. She nodded, cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but I caught the slight hesitation in her eyes. I wondered if her growing distance from David was more than just teenage moodiness. Sitting at the dining table, David suggested, "How about we take Lily to that new roller coaster this weekend? I heard it's supposed to be incredible." Lily's answer was polite, but barely enthusiastic. "Sounds fine," she said, almost as if she had somewhere else to be. I noticed the lack of sparkle she once had, but I pushed the worry aside. Teenagers change, I told myself. Their relationships with adults shift naturally, sometimes painfully. During dinner, we talked about school, work, and weekend plans. David asked about Lily's friends and her classes with care, but her responses felt robotic, like she was going through the motions. I caught a glimpse of something else, something heavier, lurking beneath her quiet replies. But when I reached out with my eyes, she seemed closed off, guarded. Later, as David watched the evening news, Lily and I washed the dishes side by side. Those moments were precious, a small island of normalcy. "Anything new at school?" I asked casually. Lily shook her head, avoiding eye contact. "Are you getting along with your friends?" I pressed gently. "I'm fine," she said, but there was no warmth in the words. That night, lying beside David, I felt a fragile kind of happiness, the kind you hold on to after surviving a storm. We had a roof over our heads, a stable income, a family that was trying. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet alarm whispered that things weren't quite as they seemed. The first real sign came on a Tuesday morning when Lily came down without her usual, "Good morning, Mom." She just nodded and sat at the table in silence. I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "What classes do you have today?" She shrugged and stared at her cereal. David entered, tying his tie, and asked softly, "Lily, how are you doing?" She muttered, "Fine," barely looking at him and pulling away when he tried to sit closer. I felt my heart tighten. Something was wrong, but I didn't know how to reach her. David tried to reassure me, saying, "It's just growing up. They pull back from adults." I nodded, but the pit in my stomach grew. There was a darkness in Lily's eyes that I'd never seen before, something that spoke of fear, not just teenage distance. I wanted to help, but didn't know how. By Thursday, the call came from Mrs. Reynolds, Lily's teacher. She spoke calmly, but with concern. Lily was distracted, isolating herself during recess, losing the spark that once made her so lively. There were no bad behaviors, just silence, a silence so loud it screamed. I felt the walls closing in around me as I listened. Was this just adolescence, or something darker? The teacher asked if we could meet. I agreed without hesitation. That night, I told David. He looked worried, more than I'd ever seen. He clasped his hands and said quietly, "I have to protect her." I admired his dedication, but I gently cautioned him not to be overbearing. We needed to tread carefully. From then on, David's protective instincts took over. He checked Lily's room before school, insisted on driving her even though she hated it, and kept asking if anything was wrong. Lily only grew colder, avoiding both of us like we were strangers. When David said he wanted to take her for a walk, she refused outright. The distance between us felt like a chasm. That weekend, Lily shut herself away in her room almost entirely, only emerging for meals, where she spoke in monosyllables. "Want to go for a walk?" I asked gently one afternoon. "No, thanks," came the quiet reply from behind her door. David whispered to me, worried. "Is she avoiding me? Did I do something wrong?" I shook my head, but shared his concern deep down. I felt helpless, watching the daughter I loved disappear behind walls I couldn't break down. Late Sunday night, I knocked on Lily's door and finally gathered the courage to say, "Sweetheart, can we talk?" She sat on the edge of her bed, knees drawn to her chest. "You've seemed so sad lately. If something's bothering you, you can tell me anything." Her eyes met mine for a moment before darting away. "It's nothing," she whispered. I reminded her about the teacher's call, and for the first time, tears welled in her eyes. "You can tell me," I urged, voice trembling with hope and fear. She shook her head violently and whispered, "If I say it, something terrible will happen." I reached out to hold her, but she pulled away sharply. "Don't touch me," she said, voice breaking. My heart shattered into pieces I didn't think I could ever put back together. David's voice came from downstairs, concerned and gentle. "Is she okay? Should I come up?" Lily curled into herself, afraid. That night, lying beside David, I couldn't sleep. The fear in Lily's eyes haunted me. We looked like a happy family from the outside, but inside, a storm was gathering. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew life as we knew it was about to change forever. The following days dragged by with a weight I couldn't shake, like a shadow hanging over every small moment we tried to share as a family. Lily's silence wasn't just teenage moodiness anymore. It felt thick, heavy, and desperate, as if she was hiding something too awful to speak aloud. She barely touched her food at breakfast, often pushing her plate away, and when David or I asked if she was feeling okay, she'd just stare down at the table and whisper, "I'm fine," barely meeting our eyes. Her retreat into herself grew more pronounced by the hour, and every glance she threw our way was coated with a mix of fear and sadness that tore at my heart. David started checking Lily's room more often than before, pacing the hallway and calling out her name softly before she left for school. He insisted on driving her every morning, saying he wanted to have some one-on-one time, but Lily would sit stiffly in the car, barely responding to any attempts at conversation. I could see the frustration building in David's face as he tried to bridge the gap, but the harder he tried, the more Lily recoiled, like a scared animal caught in a trap. I wanted to believe it was just a phase, that time and patience would heal whatever was wrong, but every passing day chipped away at that hope. One Friday morning, David surprised me by saying, "I'll take Lily to school today," his voice firm but gentle. I hesitated, knowing Lily always took the bus and hated changing routines, but David was determined. When Lily emerged from her room, she barely looked at either of us and walked past without a word. I could see the tightness in her jaw and the coldness in her eyes. David tried to engage her, but she responded with clipped answers and stiff nods, clearly uncomfortable and reluctant. Watching her like that made my chest ache. That weekend, the silence in our home was suffocating. Lily locked herself in her room for nearly every moment except mealtimes, and even then, her words were few and distant. I tried knocking on her door to invite her for walks, for talks, for anything, but all I got was a muffled no, thanks. David looked at me one afternoon with a confused frown and whispered, "Is she avoiding me? Did I say something wrong?" I wanted to comfort him, but inside, I felt the same helplessness. I didn't know what to say or do anymore. The vibrant girl I had once known seemed to be slipping away into a darkness I couldn't reach. On Sunday night, I finally forced myself to open the door to her room. She was curled up on her bed, hugging her knees tightly, as if trying to protect herself from the world. "Lily," I said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Let's talk, just you and me. You don't have to be afraid." For a moment, she looked at me, eyes glossy with unshed tears, but then she looked away and whispered, "It's nothing, Mom." "Really?" I pressed on, telling her about the call from her teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, how worried everyone was about her. That's when the tears finally spilled over, and her voice trembled as she said, "If I tell you, something terrible will happen." I reached out to hug her, but she pulled away sharply, voice breaking as she shouted, "Don't touch me." That moment broke me. I had never seen my daughter so frightened, so shut off, so utterly alone. From downstairs, David's voice echoed, calm and concerned. "Is she okay? Should I come up?" But Lily shrank into herself, silent and small. That night, I lay awake, listening to David's even breathing beside me, while my mind raced through every possible horror that might be haunting my daughter. Then, without warning, my phone rang on a gray Thursday afternoon while I was working on a client's logo design. It was the school, Mrs. Reynolds on the other end, her voice steady but filled with concern. "Mrs. Harper, I'm sorry to bother you during your work, but I need to talk about Lily." My heart sank instantly. I braced myself as she explained that Lily was drifting farther away in class, often staring blankly and withdrawing from her friends during recess. She wasn't acting out, but instead disappearing into a shell. "She used to be so social," Mrs. Reynolds said quietly. "Now she spends most breaks alone." I swallowed hard and told her about the changes I'd noticed at home. Mrs. Reynolds asked if there had been any major changes or new stressors, hoping to find a clue. I thought hard, but couldn't pinpoint anything specific beyond the usual adolescent shifts. The teacher warned that the suddenness and severity of Lily's withdrawal were unusual and suggested we meet soon to talk more. After hanging up, I let out a long breath that shook my whole body. This wasn't just a phase anymore. Something was wrong, and I was running out of time to fix it. That evening, I shared the call with David, hoping for some reassurance. Instead, I saw something new, a sharp worry in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "I have to protect her," he said quietly, hands clenched together. I understood his fear, but I also worried his protectiveness might become too much. "Kindness is good, but don't be overbearing," I told him gently, hoping we could find balance. Still, I could tell that from the next day, David's approach would change. Sure enough, the very next morning, David was checking Lily's room before she left, making sure everything was in order. He kept calling out, "How are you feeling? Is anything bothering you?" Lily answered only with short, guarded replies, and when she returned from school, David was always there to greet her. On Friday, David announced, "I'm driving Lily to school today," with a hopeful smile. I nodded, though I could see Lily stiffen at the news, her eyes flickering with reluctance and unease. But she said nothing, simply followed along, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. That weekend, things grew worse. Lily shut herself off completely, retreating to her room, avoiding family time, and barely speaking even when we were at the table. I knocked gently on her door, offering, "It's a beautiful day outside. Would you like to go for a walk?" The answer came quietly from behind the door, "No, thanks." Then, after a pause, "David says he wants to come too." Another long silence. Then, "No, thanks anyway." Watching from the hallway, David turned to me, confused and hurt. "Is she avoiding me? Did I mess up somehow?" I gave him what comfort I could, but inside, I was drowning in doubt. That Sunday, I made up my mind to try one last time. I entered Lily's room to find her sitting stiffly on the bed, clutching her knees. Lily, can we talk? You don't have to carry this alone. Her eyes were red and swollen as tears welled up again. She whispered, I can't tell you. If I do, something terrible will happen. I moved closer, reaching out, but she pulled away, shaking her head violently, her voice trembling with fear. Please, Mom, don't make me say it. Her terror was palpable. David's voice floated up from downstairs, gentle and patient. I'm here, Lily. Whatever it is, I'll protect you. But instead of calming her, those words seemed to make her recoil even further, and she curled up small in the corner, sobbing quietly. The daughter I loved more than anything was trapped in a silence I couldn't break, and I was losing my grip on the family I thought we had rebuilt. After that night, the house felt heavier, as if every corner held a secret too dark to speak aloud. Lily retreated further into herself, her silence becoming a wall that neither David nor I could break down, no matter how gently or insistently we tried. When I sat with her, hoping for a flicker of connection, she stared blankly ahead, refusing to meet my gaze, as if afraid that opening her mouth would unleash something she couldn't control. David's patience began to fray, his usual calm replaced by a restless edge, but I tried to shield Lily from any pressure, believing that pushing too hard would only drive her further away. I felt caught between wanting answers and respecting her silence, a mother's instinct screaming that something was terribly wrong, yet unable to force the truth from her trembling lips. One afternoon, as I tried to organize her room, hoping to find a clue or a sign, I noticed a large, worn envelope tucked beneath her bed. Its brown paper was creased and heavy, and when I pulled it out, I found it stuffed with thick bundles of cash, $20, $50, and $100 bills, all meticulously wrapped in rubber bands. The total amount exceeded $5,000, an impossible sum for a 13-year-old to have earned or saved without explanation. My hands trembled as I counted, disbelief and fear coursing through me. Why would Lily be hiding so much money? Where had she gotten it? The questions spun in my mind like a storm, but I knew one thing for certain. This was no ordinary secret, and whatever it was tearing her apart from the inside. Before I could process it fully, the front door opened earlier than expected, and David's voice called out from downstairs. Claire, where are you? Panic tightened my throat. I hurried to hide the envelope, but my fingers fumbled, betraying my nerves. Up here, I called back, trying to steady my breath. David's footsteps climbed the stairs, slower than usual, and he paused at Lily's door, noticing the bundle of cash in my hand. What's that? His face shifted from confusion to alarm in an instant. I showed him the envelope, voice barely above a whisper. I found this under Lily's bed. I don't know where she got it. His eyes flickered with something I couldn't read, surprise, concern, or something darker. David took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure, but I saw the tension coiling beneath his calm exterior. Maybe it's money someone was keeping for her, he suggested, though his words sounded hollow even to me. We need to talk to Lily, give her a chance to explain. But deep down, I knew the truth wouldn't come easily. Lily was scared, more scared than either of us had realized. That amount is not normal for a child her age, David admitted reluctantly. I nodded, the weight of it pressing down harder than ever. When Lily returned from school that afternoon, she moved quietly through the front door, avoiding both of us as if she could disappear by sheer will. Lily, could you come to the living room for a minute? Your mom and I need to talk to you, I called softly. She stiffened, then reluctantly entered the room where David and I sat side by side on the couch, trying to look calm despite the storm raging inside. I held up the envelope, feeling the air tighten around us. I found this in your room. Can you tell us where it came from? My voice was gentle, but the question hung heavy in the air. Her face drained of color, and she stared at the envelope as if it were a living thing ready to bite her. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her silence was a wall between us, impenetrable and cold. David leaned forward, voice soft and patient. Lily, we're not angry. We just want to help. Please tell us where this money came from. Tears welled in her eyes, but her lips pressed tight as if afraid to betray some terrible secret. Then, trembling, she shook her head violently, fear written in every line of her small frame. You can tell me anything, I pleaded, standing and moving closer, trying to bridge the growing distance. Whatever it is, we can face it together. But she took a step back, voice barely a whisper. I can't say it. If I do, something bad will happen. The fear in her eyes was raw, primal. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she told me the truth, but I knew I couldn't push her past this point. David stood, his own voice thick with frustration and pain. Lily, I'm your father. Nothing will hurt you while I'm here. We'll protect you. But instead of relief, her trembling intensified, and she covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. Emma, I called out, reaching to hold her, but she twisted away, tears streaming down her cheeks. Don't touch me, she shouted, voice breaking and desperate. The rejection stabbed me deeper than I expected, and I sat down heavily, heart breaking into pieces I didn't think could be fixed. That night, Lily locked herself in her room, refusing dinner, refusing any comfort. David and I sat in the living room, wrapped in a silence thick with dread. I tried to hold on to hope, but my thoughts spiraled in dark circles. Who was hurting my daughter? How had she been pushed into this corner? And how could we save her before it was too late? The following morning, everything changed in the most unexpected and terrifying way. I heard a knock on the door, firm and official, followed by the cold voices of strangers introducing themselves as FBI agents. The men were serious, professional, their presence filling our home with an icy fear I couldn't shake. Agent Mason and Agent Reed sat down where David and I had spoken with Lily just days before, their faces grim as they began to explain the nightmare that had unfolded beneath our very roof. Mrs. Harper, Agent Mason began, voice steady but somber, your daughter has done nothing wrong. She is a victim. My heart skipped a beat, caught between disbelief and relief. A victim of what? I asked, voice trembling. The agents exchanged looks before Agent Reed spoke quietly. Your daughter has been targeted in a child exploitation scheme. Someone close to her has been secretly photographing her personal belongings and distributing them online. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The thought of my sweet, fragile girl being violated in such a way was unbearable. They told me the perpetrator had taken photos of her clothes, private items, even images that should have been sacred. The images were being sold on illegal sites for profit, exploiting my daughter's innocence in the most disgusting way imaginable. I was speechless, my mind racing to process the horror. Who could do this? Why, Lily? I whispered, tears threatening to spill. The agents explained that they couldn't reveal all details, as it might jeopardize the investigation, but assured me they had enough evidence to act. Before I could absorb the weight of it all, the front door opened again, and David walked in, unsuspecting of what awaited him. Claire, I had to come home early. How's Lily? His voice was warm but tired. His eyes widened as he saw the agents sitting in our living room. Who are these people? He asked, confusion turning to alarm. Agent Mason stood, calm but resolute. David, you are under arrest for sexual exploitation of a child and for production and distribution of child pornography. David protested vehemently, insisting it was a mistake, but the evidence was overwhelming. As they handcuffed him and led him away, his voice cracked with desperation, shouting, Claire, please believe me. I didn't do this. I sank into the nearest chair, my mind numb, my heart shattered. The man I had trusted, loved even, was gone. Taken by a darkness I never could have imagined lurked beneath his quiet exterior. All I could do was hold on to the shattered pieces of my daughter and hope that somehow we would find a way through this nightmare together. After David was taken away that afternoon, the silence in the house was deafening, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to break through the heavy stillness. I sat on the couch for what felt like hours, my mind spinning with shock and disbelief, trying to wrap my head around the fact that the man I had trusted with my heart and my daughter had been living a dark, hidden life that none of us saw coming. The betrayal cut deeper than I could ever have imagined, but my focus quickly shifted to Lily, who needed me more than ever. I knew I had to be strong for her, even when every part of me felt broken. That night, I finally made my way to Lily's room, knocking softly before stepping inside. She was curled up on her bed, her face pale and tear-streaked, eyes heavy with exhaustion and pain no child should ever carry. Lily, I whispered, sitting beside her, careful not to crowd her space. I'm here now. You're safe. Her small hands reached out hesitantly, then pulled away as if unsure whether she could trust this safety. Mom, she said, voice cracking under the weight of months of fear. I was scared. I didn't want to say anything because I was afraid it would make everything worse. I held her close, feeling her trembling body against mine, promising silently that nothing would ever hurt her again while I was here. The next days were a blur of phone calls, meetings with detectives, and arrangements for therapy sessions. The Seattle Psychological Treatment Center specialized in helping children like Lily heal from trauma, and I was relieved when we found a counselor who understood the delicate balance between giving her space and helping her find her voice again. Lily was quiet at first, barely speaking in her sessions, but slowly, with patience and kindness, she began to open up. Each small step felt like a victory, a light breaking through the darkness that had enveloped her for so long. Watching her regain pieces of herself was the only thing that kept me going. Mark, Lily's biological father, stepped up in ways I hadn't expected. Despite our complicated history, he showed nothing but genuine care and concern for his daughter. He came to therapy sessions with us, offering his support and reassuring Lily that she was not alone. His presence was a balm, helping Lily feel connected to a part of her life that had always been steady and safe. It was strange and difficult to navigate, but I was grateful for every bit of love and stability that surrounded her. Together, we started to rebuild the fragile trust that trauma had nearly destroyed. As winter settled over Portland, we made the difficult decision to move to a new apartment, a fresh start away from the memories embedded in the walls of our old home. The new place was bright and open, filled with sunlight and the promise of new beginnings. Lily hesitated at first, wary of change, but as the days passed, the fresh air seemed to breathe life back into her. She began to smile more often, her laughter returning in small bursts like fragile blossoms pushing through thawing snow. I watched her with cautious hope, knowing that healing wasn't linear, but willing to cherish every moment of progress. One afternoon, as we sat on the couch in our new living room, Lily surprised me by asking, "Mom, can I answer the phone when Mark calls next time?" Her voice was soft but firm, filled with a quiet strength I hadn't heard in months. I smiled, touched by her willingness to reconnect with her father, knowing how much it meant to her. Mark had been calling every day, but Lily had been too afraid to talk, retreating from the world while she tried to heal. Now, she was ready to face parts of her life she had shut away, and I couldn't have been prouder. "Of course," I said, reaching out to squeeze her hand gently. That evening, when Mark called, Lily's voice came through the phone, steady and clear. "Dad, it's me," she said. I could hear the relief in his voice as he responded. "Lily, I've been worried sick. Are you okay?" She told him about her fears and struggles, about the nights when she felt lost but kept fighting. Mark listened, his voice full of love and apology for not being there when she needed him most. "You don't have to apologize," she whispered. "You're here now, and that's what matters." Hearing their conversation reminded me how important it was to surround Lily with support, no matter how complicated the past. The week after, Mark came to visit our apartment, arriving with a bouquet of lilies, her favorite flowers, and a chocolate cake she hadn't seen in months. He greeted me with a respectful nod, his eyes filled with regret and determination. "I know I made mistakes before," he said quietly, "but I want to protect both of you now. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness or reconciliation, only to be part of Lily's life and support you as a friend." Lily stood and walked toward him, a tentative smile breaking through her cautious expression. "Dad, I'm okay. Will you come visit sometimes?" she asked softly. Mark wrapped her in a warm embrace and promised, "Whenever you want, I'll be here." As December rolled in, the legal proceedings moved forward with surprising speed. David was sentenced to 25 years in prison, a harsh but necessary justice for the crimes he had committed. Investigations revealed multiple victims, their stories finally heard and validated. The cash Lily had hidden away was submitted as evidence and later donated to a fund supporting other survivors, a small but meaningful step toward healing for all involved. The nightmare that had threatened to destroy us was being confronted head-on, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to hope. On Christmas morning, Lily and I stayed home, our new apartment glowing with soft lights and simple decorations. Mark joined us in the afternoon, and together we unwrapped presents, laughter filling the room like a fragile melody of joy. Lily looked up at me, eyes shining with a newfound confidence, and said, "Mom, we've become a real family, haven't we?" Her words struck me deeply, reminding me that family wasn't just about blood or legal ties, but about love and protection. "What do you think a real family is?" I asked her. She paused thoughtfully before answering. "It's about loving each other and keeping each other safe, no matter what." Mark nodded, a genuine smile on his face. "She's right. We might not be perfect, but we're real." As snow began to fall outside, blanketing the city in quiet white, I looked out the window and felt a calm settle over me. I had once believed that family meant perfect marriages and flawless relationships, but now I understood that real family was something deeper and more powerful. It was about resilience, forgiveness, and the courage to keep going, even when the past threatened to pull you under. That night, as we watched Lily's favorite movie, I made a silent vow to always listen for the smallest changes in my daughter, to protect her fiercely, and to never let control replace love. Together, we would create a new tomorrow, built not on fear but on hope and trust. Just when I thought we had finally started to heal and rebuild our lives, a shadow returned that I never expected. Months after moving into our new apartment and beginning therapy, I received an anonymous message on my phone, a blurry photo showing a figure standing near our building, watching. My heart froze as I stared at the grainy image, disbelief twisting into fear. I tried to dismiss it as a cruel prank, but deep down, I knew better. Lily had been scared for so long, and now, even in our new home, the nightmare wasn't over. Lily came to me one evening, her voice barely above a whisper, admitting she sometimes felt like someone was following her when she left school. She described fleeting shadows in the corner of her vision, unexplained noises outside her bedroom window at night, and a growing sense of being watched. My protective instincts flared, and I promised her that I would do everything in my power to keep her safe. But the truth was, the terror that had stalked her before had never truly disappeared. It was lurking just out of sight, waiting. Desperate for answers and safety, I contacted the FBI agents who had worked on David's case, hoping they could help us again. Agent Mason and Agent Reed responded swiftly, reopening the investigation with new leads that hinted at a wider conspiracy. It appeared David hadn't acted alone. He may have manipulated others or had accomplices who helped cover his tracks. The web of betrayal was larger and more tangled than we ever imagined. Every day felt like walking on thin ice, unsure when it might crack beneath our feet. One chilling afternoon, I discovered a hidden camera concealed inside a small smoke detector in our living room ceiling. My breath caught in my throat, and panic surged through me as I realized someone had been monitoring us constantly, invading our sanctuary. I called the agents immediately, and a team came to sweep our apartment for more devices and collect evidence. The violation was total. No corner of our lives had been spared. I looked at Lily and saw the fear reflected back at me, raw and terrifying. The nightmare had followed us, refusing to be buried by distance or time. I realized then that our fight wasn't over, and the sense of safety I had clung to was fragile at best. But I also knew that retreating into fear would only give the darkness more power. We had survived so much already. We would keep surviving, keep fighting. I promised Lily that I would stand with her, no matter how long the shadow lingered or how deep the threat ran. Despite the fear, life pushed forward. Lily continued therapy, slowly finding strength and reclaiming her voice even as we navigated the haunting presence that never fully left. Mark remained a steadfast pillar of support, his commitment unwavering as we faced each new challenge together. We learned to live with caution without surrendering to terror, and every smile Lily offered became a small but fierce act of defiance against the darkness. The story ended not with neat closure but with a warning. The wounds of betrayal and exploitation are complex and deep, and sometimes the enemy remains hidden, watching from the edges of the light. I share this not to frighten, but to remind every parent to stay vigilant, to listen to the smallest changes in their children, and to never let down their guard, even when things seem calm. Healing is a journey with unexpected turns, and love is the only weapon strong enough to face the unknown. We carry on, together, hoping that one day the shadows will fade for good.